chapters of Revelation, you could spend not a couple of weeks there. You could literally spend a lifetime right there in just the writings of those 2 chapters. It is that deep, it's that profound, it's that layered. And so we're going to try to get it done in a couple of weeks, but quite frankly, there is no way. But we stay in New Jerusalem this evening. And so in the 21st and 22nd chapter of Revelation, it tells us about what the Bible calls the new heaven and the new earth, the eternal state. Now let me give you a little bit of perspective. This present universe that exists as we know it, all of the heavenly bodies, the stars, the moon, the planets, and so on, that is the present heaven. And then we have this place down here, the present earth that we live in, the atmosphere that we breathe. Surrounding our understood universe, the ever-expanding universe, is the infinite abode of an infinite God. It's as limitless as God is Himself. And so we have the first heaven that we live in, the second heaven that we can see, and the third heaven that is as expansive as God is Himself. Beyond, they've studied the universe, and the universe, quite frankly, what we begin to understand is beyond what our brains truly can comprehend, and beyond where we can comprehend, it still goes further, and beyond where we can comprehend and it goes further, He goes further than that. That's the God that we're talking about. That's the new heaven and the new earth. Someday, God is literally going to engulf, consume the entire universe, turn it into the final heaven. That's why it's called a new heaven and a new earth. Right now, we have an old heaven, an old used up earth, an old used up heaven. Both have been touched by sin. Both have been marred by the fall. In fact, the earth is the dominion of Satan. 1 John 5:19 says the whole world lies in the power of the evil one. Outer space is populated by fallen demons. But the third heaven, this pristine, pure, flawless place, that's where God inhabits. But in the recreation, there will be a new heaven and a new earth. That is to say that the third heaven will literally engulf the second and the first heaven. It will engulf, overtake it. There will be just one little pocket for a place called hell for Satan and his demons and those that deny Him. And other than that, there will be a new heaven and a new earth, and all of that will be consumed by His glory, by His place, by His power, and by His authority. That's good. But apart from that little place of hell, everything will engulf itself in that final state called the new heavens and the new earth. Now, that's not a new thought. In Isaiah 65, the Old Testament prophets, they testified of this. In Isaiah 65, 17 through 19, it says this, "For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered or come to mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in what I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem as a rejoicing, and her people a joy. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and joy in my people. The voice of weeping shall no longer be heard in her, nor the voice of crying." Now that tells us that when we get to the new heavens and the new earth, and we know that this is Isaiah's prophesying of a new heavens and a new earth. If you go through and read it, you know that Jerusalem, that Israel, it has spent its entire existence in the middle of a fight. And he says, and there's going to be joy, and it's going to be joy everlasting. That has to be something that we have not experienced at this point. Jerusalem, Israel, has a home, but it's still, even to this day, under attack. It's still being pushed. The nation is being pressed in from every side, and it's been that way since the nation's inception. Since its inception. And so what it tells us is that whenever we get into the new heaven and into the new earth, we're not going to remember what the old was like in that glorious new heaven. Now I want you to say, now that's a little stunning. That's a little stunning. You'll no longer hear of her and what was. That's a little stunning. What that's saying is not only will there no longer be sin, there'll no longer be the thought of sin. There'll no longer be a remnant of sin. There'll no longer be anything that would cause hurt or even a memory of that which would cause hurt. It's going to be a new heaven and a new earth with a glorified people that have been brought unto God Himself, and it's going to be a pretty good place. There won't even be the thought of wrongdoing or the thought of the broken, fallen nature of man that we deal with right now. That's a promise. And so now we come to Revelation, the 21st chapter, and we have this description of this. And at this point, the history of the earth is over. The final Holocaust on earth has been fought. The battle of Armageddon is finished. Satan has been taken captive and been sent to hell. Now that right there by itself should get a congregation up and he took the keys to death, hell, and the grave, but he kept the keys because he's getting ready to put that cat and all of his buddies back in and lock the door. That's done. The 1,000-year reign of Jesus is over. All of the ungodly of all the ages have been dispersed into hell. Let me tell you what that means. By the time we get to Revelation, the 21st chapter, my goodness, we should spend a little bit more than a couple of weeks. All the sinners of all the ages, they're gone. All the demons are gone. Satan is gone. The beast is gone. The Antichrist is gone. Sickness is gone. Crime is gone. Poverty is gone. Death is gone. Hurt is gone. Brokenness is gone. The flawed nature of man is gone. All that presses in on you from every side, it is gone. It's consumed. It's overwhelmed. And the power that stays in its place is the overwhelming power of a God that said, let there be light, and this was created, and he said it was finished and it was done. And then in that moment he's going to consume all of it and bring his people to him. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. The world, the universe that we know so well, it is gone. Don't be afraid of the fact that it's gone, because it's going to be replaced by something greater and better that we could have never imagined. So let's go to Revelation, the 21st chapter. And this is John. He says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no more sea. The first heaven and the first earth, they're gone, and there is no longer any sea. Pastor talked about that last week. No longer any sea. What could that look like? But to the Jew, whenever you begin studying the Jews, they're an interesting people. They lived close to the water. They liked to fish, but they didn't go out into the water. They're mostly agrarian. They crops, that type of thing, and livestock, and then they would fish. But you've noticed that every time they got ready to cast out into the deep, it makes them a little nerve-wracked, because they're a people that like the stability of land underneath their feet. The sea spoke to the Jewish people of turbulence, agitation, violence, mystery, restlessness. We see this in the stories of the Bible. Whenever Jonah was getting ready, anything could have happened to Jonah, but instead he winds up in the belly of a well at the bottom of the sea. That's scary. In Luke, whenever he says, in Matthew, at the 18th chapter, it says, whoever causes these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depth of the sea. It speaks to their fear of the sea and their fear of water. And you see this in Jesus' case. Some of his greatest miracles, he able to speak and say, peace be still, and the storm on the water closes. And then he takes a step, and that which would drown them, he stands on. See, the sea spoke of separation, but the sea is now gone. Nothing to cause fear, nothing to be afraid of, nothing to separate you from the other people of God. Not space, not money, not fear, not time. There will be for this generation of Jewish people, when he says there's going to be no more sea, Papa, what he's saying is, don't be afraid anymore. There's no reason. No one will have to speak to the turbulent sea that could consume you. No one will have to speak to that which would drown you. No one would have to speak to the storms that would come off of the Sea of Galilee and just hit the edges. No one would speak to that any longer, because it would no longer be there, just peace. No more sea. And then John looks, and in verse 2 it says, then I, John, saw a holy city, New Jerusalem. You have a new heaven and a new earth, and certainly you need a new Jerusalem. It says, coming down, New Jerusalem, coming down out of the heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. Now this is interesting to me. New Jerusalem, in John's vision, New Jerusalem was already created. New Jerusalem was already made. New Jerusalem was already done, complete. New Jerusalem is already in place. When we get to the new heaven and the new earth, they're created. But whenever New Jerusalem comes down out of the third heaven, it's already made. See, John says, I saw it not being created, but I saw it coming down. Heaven is where God is. Heaven is where Jesus went to be. And at the right time, it's going to come down into the new heavens and into the new earth, become the capital city in its final state. And it'll already be prepared. And so you see, Jesus, whenever he's saying, he says, and I go away, and I must go away, and I'm going to prepare what? A place for you. You can find more than a passive indication that the place that he went to prepare is New Jerusalem, and it's already made, it's already there. And whenever the new heaven and the new earth, they're created, this is going to land right on the top of it. It's already made, already designed, already with you in mind. And John said, whenever I saw it coming down, fully finished, fully done, fully complete, nothing lacking. So then there's 3 Jerusalems. There's 3 temples. Of course, the first temple is Solomon's temple. The second temple is the Herodian temple. The third temple will be the temple of the millennium. Then we have three Jerusalems. The historical Jerusalem. There is the millennial Jerusalem. Then there is the eternal Jerusalem, which will be the capital city of eternity. New Jerusalem is the capital city of heaven. It's not just heaven, it's the capital city of heaven. It's the city whose builder and maker is God. It's the city that Abraham longed for and looked for. It's the city that Ezekiel, he had a prophetic vision that is centered around the holy temple, the third temple. It is the holy city of God. And in Hebrews 12:22 it says this, but you have come to Mount Zion and the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to the innumerable company of angels, to the general assembly, the church of the firstborn who are registered in heaven, to God, the judge of all, to the spirits of just men made perfect. That's a mouthful right there. What he's saying is that's a place where all of the saints are. It's a special city that comes down. It's adorned as the bride ready for her husband. It's the innumerable company of the angels. It's the general assembly. It's the church. It's the firstborn. It's the God of glory. It's the spirit of men made perfect. What does that mean? That is the bride. It's beauty. It's splendor. It's glory. And it's an amazing thing the way that he begins to express the beauty of the bride, adorned as a bride, emphasizing the character of the bride. That's the place where the church dwells. Now, I get this. As guys, whenever we begin to talk about that we're the bride of Christ, that makes every guy really uncomfortable. We're like, yeah, okay, now, me and his, I know I love Jesus and everything, but I can only love a guy so much. You know what I'm saying? No. See, but let me put this on a different thing, a different place, a different spot. I've married literally hundreds of people at this point, and I don't care how hard the guy is. I don't care how strong he is. I don't care how thick the calluses are. I don't care what he's been through or what war he's fought in. Everything is perfect up until that day. The bride does all of the work. She does all the planning. She chooses all the colors. She comes in and sets it up, and I'll be honest with you, she gives me the notes of what I'm supposed to say, and it makes me a little nervous because if you mess it up, she'll tell you. I've had him in the middle of it go, you got 2 words back there. I know. It's my ADHD. I mean, I'm doing the best I can. And you're standing there. And whenever she marches through those back doors, dressed in white, done her hair up and her makeup up, no matter how hard they are, they just begin to say, that's been prepared for me. That's the church. And that's how he feels about us. Whenever we get it right, whenever we've done the work, whenever we prepare, see, get this. We're in Easter week. We're in Resurrection Sunday week. Get this. Salvation is free. Grace is free. And after that, there's a relationship to work on. And whenever the church gets it right,
then God the Father, He begins to look back toward the bride that He has prepared for since the beginning, the foundation of the earth, and says, that was worth my Son dying for. That was worth all of the trouble and all of the work. Maybe you've looked around and said, I just don't know why He did it. You're it. Whenever you adorn yourself in splendor, whenever you bow in prayer, whenever you worship in spite of the battle, whenever you push on through, He says, that's the one that has prepared for me. That's the one that is desiring me. That is the one. See, the world where we're at right now, they would have you believe that God the Father is sitting on the throne saying, the next rape, the next school shooting, the next battle, the next thing that goes wrong, I'm just going to call it to a close. And even the martyrs that are underneath the temple, they're looking around, they're saying, how much longer? Because they don't fully have their glorified body yet. But God is not going to come back for what is wrong. He's going to come back for a church, for a bride, for a people that are eagerly awaiting His return, that are without spot, without blemish, that have their hands in the air and their attention toward the God of glory, saying, we're ready, come, come, come. See, He says it's the bride. This is the bride's city. This is the bride's gift. This is the place. It's the place the saints go to be with the Lord. It's the location of the marriage supper of the Lamb. It's the city identified by the people who are in it, who are the bride of Christ, His bride, His church, His people. Oh, my goodness. His people. Us. Then in Revelation, the 21st chapter, the 9th verse, it says this, then one of the angels who had the 7 bowls filled, John recognized the angel. He's one of the ones with the 7 bowls, with the 7 last plagues, came to me. So he said, you're the guy. Oh my goodness. That powerful angel, that one that was commissioned with the task. The 7 last plagues came to me and talked with me, saying, come, I will show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. So it's the bride's city. It's the city where the church dwells. People are not disassociated with the place. It's not just a glorious city. It's a glorious city for a glorious people. I want you to know what we're going toward. We don't have to be afraid. It's a glorious city designed for a glorious people. This is the bride's city because this is where the church is. The Lamb's wife is there. Cities are identified in ancient times by the character of the people that are in them. This would have spoken to the nation of Israel. This would have spoken. See, Athens was a city of learning. Florence was a city of art. Rome was a city of power. But this city is the bride. This city is perfect. This city is pure. This city is the anointed city of God. This is His called people. They're identified not by just the glory, but by the ones that are in it. It's identified by you. By you. By the ecclesia, by the church. You see, whenever we stand up here with this passion, what we're saying is, it's you. It's you. So whenever you've got a groom that is ready and waiting, I can't imagine if I would have been ready and waiting for Trudy and she would have been acting a different way. See, I want us to see both sides. He's ready for you. But there's expectations of the bride. How are we doing? See, I want to call us to a different place. There is such great expectation, both for us and from the groom. So the question comes, is this only for the church to occupy this place? And the answer is no. Although this is the bride's city and the church gives it its unique character, all of the saints of all the ages are going to be there. They're all going to be there. The Old Testament saints, the New Testament saints, the saints who have been redeemed and came out of the Great Tribulation, they'll all be in that place. The wonderful truth is that it's the city of all the redeemed of all of the ages. So why single out the church? Why do we single out the church? Because the book of Revelation is written to the church. The entire New Testament is written to the church. And the truth is that this city is for all of the redeemed, all of the ages. It's for a life Elijah and Elisha and Noah and Moses and all that are redeemed, the ones that we lost last week and the ones that we have lost thousands of years ago, it does not matter. They're all there and there's a place for them. And not only that, the thing that is exciting, there's a place for you and I. Give Him praise. So, but this book is written to the persecuted church. The persecuted, persevering church. It's the bride city from the perspective of the reader because it's his city. Saint, it's uniquely his city. It's uniquely her city. It's uniquely your city. It's written to those who love Christ to give them comfort, to give them hope. And so John looks as he looks and he sees a new heaven and a new earth. And the new heaven and the new earth have been completely recreated. And when he sees them coming out of the third heaven into the new heaven and into the new earth, this is the bride city. And it's characterized in splendor because the church is in it. Because the people of God are in it. Because of you. Which will be meeting with its bridegroom, Christ, forever and ever and ever. So notice, it's coming down out of heaven, which means you want to know where heaven is? Up. Jesus, whenever he ascended, he went up. Every so I don't know exactly where it's at, but I can tell you it's up. It's up. I don't know whenever you get far enough up if you take a left or a right, but it's up. So it's coming down out of heaven, which, as I've said earlier, means it already had to exist and now is simply being incorporated into its final state. So now the next question is, why a city? It'll be a different city, surely, than any city that we've ever known. It's not like any city you've ever seen. In the first place, there won't be any politics in the city. There won't be anyone running for a position because there's going to be one position and he's got it. And there won't be anyone that challenges that. It won't be a corrupt city. It'll be a different kind of city. So why call it a city at all? Because you have to understand, again, I'm trying to put this in context of the people it would have been written to 2,000 years ago, because you have to understand how they viewed a city in that time. The people who wandered in the wilderness saw a city as a place of safety, peace, joy, fellowship, culture. That's why Abraham was looking for a city. That's why the nation of Israel, get this, they're never ever going to give up that land. They're never going to. We're not going to be able to negotiate this. They're looking for a city. Now, what they don't fully understand is it's there, not here. But they're not going to give up their spot because they've been fighting for this spot literally since the beginning of recorded time. And so Abraham was looking for a city. The Jewish people who were wandering, they wanted a place of their own and a city of their own, and they keep being displaced. That's why Jerusalem is such a prize for them. The people who have wandered and they're weary from wandering, a city is a place of warmth and of fellowship and friendship and food and safety and protection and socialization and communion. And it's a place where all of the saints of all of the ages, it's a place where just men have been made perfect. It's a place where holy angels are. It's the place where God is. It's the place where Christ is. It's the place where we want to be because we want to be with people that we love. My goodness, what a thought. All of the redeemed gathered in a bustling city. So what does the holy city look like? Harmony, unity, responsibility, the sharing of duties. You're going to have tasks. We'll all have tasks and duties in that place. We'll socialize at all different levels and points in ways and means. Yet perfect oneness. Nothing to mar or interrupt perfect fellowship. Can you imagine pure fellowship? Can you imagine a society of people where no one ever gets mad? I'm just tossing this out there. I'm betting heaven doesn't have Facebook. I'm just tossing that out there. I think one of God's first things is going to be, He's going to say, social media to the pit of hell. No one ever does anything wrong. No one ever thinks anything wrong, and as a matter of fact, no one ever even remembers anything wrong. Can you imagine a society where everyone gets perfectly along all of the time? Can you imagine a society where everyone loves everyone like God loves everyone? Can you imagine a society where perfect love is the rule of the day, where everything is absolutely perfect, where you get along with everybody perfectly forever and ever, where you have perfect love with perfect people always? That's perfect fellowship. Marvelous thought. Then in Revelation 21:11, it says, having the glory of God. Now, if you're in your Bible, underline that. Having the glory of God. Its greatest distinction, the essence of the eternal city and of heaven, is God's manifest glory. God's glory is manifest. Isaiah 60:19 says this, the sun shall be no more the light by day, neither for brightness shall the moon give light unto thee. But the Lord shall be unto thee an everlasting light, and thy God thy glory. I went old school on you for a moment. Verse 23 of chapter 21, it says, the city had no need of a sun or of a moon to shine on it, for the glory of God illuminated it. The Lamb is its light. You don't need stars. You don't need the sun. You don't need the moon anymore. You don't need them, because God will light the whole infinite heaven, but particularly this sparkling, beautiful jewel called New Jerusalem. 150 years ago, a man by the name of J.A. Cease wrote these beautiful words. He says this, that shining is not from any material combustion, not from any consumption of fuel that needs to be replaced by one supply that's burnt out. For it is the uncreated light of Him who is light dispensed by and through the Lamb of God as the everlasting lamp to the home and the hearts and the understanding of His glorified saints. See, this is the place where Hebrews 11 says, and He waited for the city whose foundation and whose builder and maker is God. And verse 21 of chapter 21 describes the city. The 12 gates were pearls. Each individual gate was one pearl. Have you thought about that? A pearl the size of a gate. The street of the city was pure gold, like transparent glass. Imagine that. Think about it. I don't know how big the gates are, but the gate has got to be big enough for my skinny rear end to get through. Okay? So it's got to be. Now, I don't know if you've looked around recently, but that's a big pearl, right? That's a big pearl. Even if it's a small gate, if we're going to go through in a single line, and I'm assuming in heaven they're going to have crowd control. Because I don't know about you, but I ain't waiting in line. I'm going through, you know. My grandpa always said I wouldn't act like that. He said, you'll have your glorified body so you'll straighten up. I still think there'll be enough of me to cause some problems. You know what I'm saying? But we have this huge, this oyster. Have you ever thought about the size of the oyster that it would take to be able to make a pearl that size? Now, number one, it doesn't, the whole chicken and egg thing doesn't matter to God. If He wants a pearl this size, He can just make it. Or He can, introduce us once we get there to the oyster that made him. He's, that's His job. I mean, he made the 12. And He gets to sing in the choir. He's God, right? And the street is made, the stuff that we have accumulated that's, up to $1,600, $1,700 an ounce. He says, it's not a big deal. I'm going to use that for pavement. And not only is it going to be gorgeous and gold, but I'm going to make it transparent. As if gold isn't cool enough the way it is. He says, let's just one up it one more time. But you know this, every word of the Word of God is pointing to something, right? So I want to close with this idea of a pearl. See, I love the idea that in order to enter New Jerusalem, you have to go through a pearl. Heaven is literally entered through a pearl. What's the significance, you might ask? What is the significance? You know how a pearl is made? The animal has to be wounded. And then as that little wounded animal begins to treat its wound, literally what it does is a piece of sand or a piece of debris gets in there, and the mollusk that would be destroyed by that little piece of sandpaper that is rubbing against it, begins to secrete and begins to engulf that which would wound it, that which would destroy it, that which would overwhelm it, in something that will protect what is valuable from it. The thought is that we enter through heaven through a pearl is symbolic of the one who was wounded for us. It was through His wounds that He created the pearls that usher us into His holy and eternal and perfect presence. Heaven is entered through His suffering. This week is perfect for this. Heaven is entered through His travail. Heaven is entered through His blood. Heaven is entered through the agony of the cross. If there is no wound, if there is no pearl, if there is no Jesus, then there is no entryway. There is no death. There is no salvation. And we enter through the pearls made by the wounded Redeemer. The broken Son of God, the slain Lamb who was slain before the foundations of the earth. I love the symbolism that we enter through something that was created by a wound. By a wound. We enter through the broken Son of God. The slain Lamb, our Redeemer, our Savior, our God.